Hello, everyone. My name is Landon.
And I'm Michael.
And welcome to the In Their 20s talk show, a show where we interview influential people to talk about what they did in their 20s and also give you the best advice. Today, we just interviewed Ron Culp. He is an amazing guy. He has a very long-standing and respected career in public relations and communications, 40 plus years. He's worked with so many different companies, gave us a lot of knowledge in our interview. Michael, how did you think it went?
I loved the interview. He talked about a lot of important things that are not just for PR majors, but for all industries, through every student, every young professional. We talked about how to shift from career to career. So he went from politics to corporate communications. And as well as, I've been at this job for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. When is a good time to switch? And how do I know I'm making the right choice?
And not only has he been a senior executive at a lot of these big communication companies, for those being Fortune 500 companies, but he's also a consultant. He's an educator. He serves as a professor, an author as well. He's created and published 3 books. One of those just came out, and we're going to include that in the bio as well. So yeah, Ron Culp, just a great guy. We're about to dive into the interview and share it with everybody. But before we do, if you're watching this interview today, please subscribe on YouTube. It takes 2-3 seconds, right, Michael, to click that red subscription button. It just helps us so much. It helps us understand that, what we're doing really matters, helps us understand that you're watching, and really keeps us motivated to, of course, interview more influential people.
Make sure to comment down below as well.
Yes.
The more comments you make, the more feedback we get, and we can really curate these interviews to what you guys are looking for.
Yeah. All right. You ready? Let's dive in.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and jump in with Ron.
Ron, how are
Hello,
you?
gentlemen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. You guys have to tell me. This is impressive what you've done. I'm going to have to do a turnabout and send you some questions that I'm curious about.
Of course. Before we begin with the interview, if you want to interview us real quick, that's fine.
I really have to know what motivated you guys to do this. Now, I read the DePaulia and some of the other stuff, but that's okay for maybe a class project, but no one keeps it going.
Yeah, to us, we never really saw it as a class project. We saw it as something that we could help a lot of people our age with. We came up with the idea back in March when everybody was losing their offers due to the pandemic or getting them delayed out. And me and Landon, we kind of just thought back to all the amazing advice people in our lives have given us, including my own mentors for internships I've worked for. I've stayed connected with my managers, and all this advice that they gave us really helped us get to where we are today. And we thought, why can't this advice be, or everyone have access to this advice?
It's people like you, all the other influential people that we've spoken with, the industry experts. That's why we're able to have this. And just thinking about the importance of storytelling, especially in a time like this, we just want to give people unique stories. We want people, our audience, our peers, to hear from unique backgrounds, perspectives of, how this person did that. That's how you're really able to figure out what you got to do in your life. Hearing from other people. Yeah, again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, again, to speak with us today on In Their 20s. We're super excited for this interview. As, a public relations major, I'm extra excited for this one. Just to speak about your long-standing career in PR and communications, the different roles that you've had, and again, just all your advice for people in their 20s. So how does that all sound so far?
It sounds perfect.
Perfect. Well, Ron, through looking at your LinkedIn and the different careers that you've had, we noticed that you had a shift from politics to corporate communications early on into your career. Majored in pre-law and journalism, but of course, that pre-law, one of your first jobs was as a political reporter. So again, heavily involved with politics. You served as a press secretary at one point, worked for the New York State Assembly. What really woke you up to then transition to corporate communications?
Well, when I started out in the 20s, I just wanted to get a job because I graduated into a recession, just like many of you guys are doing. So I needed to work, and I didn't get a job directly related to what I wanted to do, which was being a newspaper reporter. So I took a political job because I'd been so involved in politics in college. It was just seemed natural. Well, I hated the job, and I spent the entire time looking for a reporting job. And then when I finally found it, I thought it was the best job of my life. I was so excited. So my kind of advice that I pull out of that and I share with people, don't worry about that first job. So many people are fixated on it's got to be exactly what I want. Just get the job and other things will come from it, or use it as the launch pad for what you really want to do. And I thought I really wanted to be a reporter, and I was having a ball. I thought it was the best single job ever, and I thought I'd be doing it forever, except one problem: it doesn't pay well. So when someone came along and said, hey, how would you like to be a press secretary to a dynamic young congressional candidate? I said, what the heck, how much does it pay? And it was double what I was making. So of course I lined up quickly and went off to do that job. The only problem with that is the candidate lost. So then you're back to being unemployed. But fortunately, through that relationship and that campaign with all of these people who were working on it, a couple of people who were consultants said, hey, I think maybe there's a job in New York that has your name written all over it, doing public relations for a bunch of candidates for the New York State Assembly, which is their state house. So I went out and I worked on 23 campaigns. We won all of them. And so, poof, I had another job because the speaker then hired me to be in the press office and eventually the head of member services for the entire assembly.
Super interesting. And I really, really love your point on not stressing too hard on that first job out of college, as a lot of people our age do. I think as professionals, we're all fighting for that, control over our lives, control to be able to take the jobs that we want, do the things that we're very passionate about. That's what we're all really interested in. But you got to understand that that doesn't just happen overnight. You need to make sacrifices early in your career. You need to meet people. You need to do things. Some of those things are going to be jobs that you maybe aren't super, super interested in and compelled by. But, by taking those early jobs in your career, you're able to build a strong resume, network well, meet people, learn new things. And that can, of course, help you find that control later on in your career.
Absolutely. Let me tell you a story about another graduate from our program from DePaul. She did this career plan saying, I want to work for one of the best companies in the world. So she went on, got the Fortune Most Admired Companies and ranked them. And now, how close can I get to a job within those companies? And so she went through everything, the Google and Apple and everything else. The one thing she said I can do right here in Chicago while still in my senior year is I can work at Starbucks. So she became a barista. Then all of a sudden she's staying online, she's checking their job board, and poof, there's a job that's open in public relations, an internship at corporate headquarters. She applied and she got the job because she was a barista and she understood the business. And she's got this great career at Starbucks and may never leave because she said it really is truly a great place to work.
That's magical.
Right. And it might be those first jobs that you get or those first internships that are just a stepping stone. It might not be exactly what you're looking for, but it might have just a piece, like you said, just a piece that you need to the puzzle that the company you want to work for is going to look for on your resume or in your interview.
You're absolutely right. If I can add another story about along those lines, a young guy just graduated, this is a long time ago, but he had just graduated from the University of Southern California, and he was looking for a job, and he got a job working for Eli Lilly and Company as a sales rep. And I know a lot of people roll their eyes like, I don't want to be a sales rep. Well, this was life-changing for Jerry because he becomes a sales rep. I happen to be running communications for Lilly in Indianapolis, and everyone was always complaining that no one really knew the business and knew what the sales force was wanting. So I asked HR, go look for somebody. Let me know who has filled out an application. that says that they might be interested in public relations. So they scanned all 35,000 employee resumes and bios and came back, one person had said that they were possibly interested in PR, and it was Jerry. So I called him, had a phone interview. He flew him out to Indianapolis, interviewed him, and hired him. Jerry was one of the most incredible, talented young people we've ever hired in the business, would never have been discovered traditionally. And he went on from there to launch a public relations career that included becoming the head of public relations for Mercedes US and then Toyota US. And he's now teaching at the University of Southern California, his alma mater. So it's life-changing. Get that first job and figure out how does it get me to the next job rather than, oh, that's not exactly what I want to do.
Right. Those stepping stones are essential to get, where you want to be. And it may take a few internships or a few introductory jobs into that career field. But once you get that job, our next question is kind of, you got that next job, and we were looking about your experience, and you had a lot of jobs, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years across your career. Our main question is, when is the perfect time to switch jobs, or what is the most appropriate time to change positions?
Well, I used to have a rule that you cannot leave a job in less than 2 years. Now that's the old. Now I really beg young people to stay at least a year. It takes you a year to really understand what you're doing. I've had one job that I absolutely hated, and I knew it the day I started that it wasn't the right job. But back then I said, I've got to stick it out. Well, I had a great experience, but I still didn't like the fact that I was in an industry that was not really too exciting. So I wanted out of it, but I remained. I left 2 years to the date that I started, by the way, because then I planned on what will the next move be. So try to stay. Don't let the first disappointment in the job upset you or get you to say, I can't take this anymore, I quit. Figure out a way to make it work. You will become far more resilient, and it will give you some background you're going to need as you move up your career ladder.
How did you know, even at a job that you liked, maybe this was a job, that you really enjoyed going into, is you're really passionate about, how did you still know what opportunity came across your desk that you were like, you know what, this is great, but it might be time for me to try something new?
Great question, Michael. It's really tough. I absolutely loved my job at Lilly. It was one of the best jobs in the city of Indianapolis. When I told my parents I was leaving the job to move to Connecticut to work at Pitney Bowes, they both were crying. Like, how would you possibly leave one of the greatest companies in Indiana? I was on the board of the Indianapolis 500 Festival. I had a pace car. I was living the life, but I also came to the realization that to move up in the organization, I either needed an MBA or a law degree, because that was the career path. So I saw my own glass ceiling career-wise and realized that I just have to keep my options open. A consultant working with Lilly in the East Coast told me about this job, and he said, to make it in your career, you have to move to a major market. You either have to be in New York or Chicago. And ideally, you move to New York area and you will be able to attract jobs elsewhere. And if you eventually want to go back to the Midwest, you'll have that option. So that's what happened. I saw the fact that my career was probably maxed out. I could have stayed there my entire career and retired probably quite well off and had a great time in a wonderful city, which I adore. But it was time to move on if you wanted your career to move up.
It is an unfortunate truth that they say you are more likely to get a higher wage if you switch into a new job than if you stay at the one you're in, because you may get that 5% raise every year, 10% raise every year. But when you switch to a whole other company, you're fully reevaluated. So they may see more value in you, even though you may be very, very, very valued at your current company. they might not just have a structure in place that can get you to where you want to be or need to be.
There's a lot of truth to that, but I think there's more competition now to retain talent that is really adding value. So the key is to jump into the job, become indispensable, because I was offered a counter offer on all of my jobs to stay. And I thought that was really cool. And a couple of them matched the salaries that I was going to. But you still had to make the decision, yes, but is this going to get me, even if I stay a little longer, is it really going to get me up to the next rung? So I'll also tell you a story. A young mentee of mine just moved to a corporate job from an agency. And he was so valued at that agency that they matched the corporate salary, which was a significant increase because he had proven his value in the job that he had. And they really wanted to keep him. And it made it very difficult because he loved the camaraderie he had, and he's moving into something totally different. But he went ahead and accepted the opportunity because it's going to move him further along in his career.
So Ron, to transition, I have a two-part question for you. You have this 40+ year career in senior communication roles at a lot of different companies. I understand, you're very, very educated about this industry of PR and communications. You've seen all sides of this business. How has it evolved since you were in your 20s? That's the first part of the question. And the second part is, when you see, young people currently in their 20s trying to get into a position within the communications or PR industry, what's advice that you love to give to them? What skills do they need to know now?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I tell them is to bring passion to the job. Don't just move into pursuing a career in public relations if it seems a little easier than what Michael did with the finance angle. That scares the hell out of most PR people. But the PR people that get the basic business knowledge, and if they can write a good business memo, they are going to be so valued in an agency or corporate job that their career is golden. So focus on how does this business make its money and how do employees help it succeed, rather than just taking an order like, oh, you want a press release or you want some social media. Why? How does it influence the corporation's success? And the minute you tie yourself to that, it's a magic moment for your career.
And then also, speaking about the evolution of the industry since you were in your 20s, how has the industry changed over the past few years? Not that long though.
It is totally changed, because when I was in college, there was nothing called public relations as far as a course. So we all had to be journalism majors, and that's why there's so many former reporters in the senior levels of the profession. So that was the big evolution. The skill set of really using research and analytics to help us decide. It used to be gut. We'd say, yeah, we think this is going to sell. And a CEO or a head of marketing might say, how do you know? Well, I've seen it work before, or it's worked for this company or that company, so we think it's going to work here. Decisions today are being made on, we're going to invest this in the public relations program because you're committing to deliver X. And it's that fine-tuned that organizations can literally predict if they get the right kind of a placement on the nightly news tonight, how many of their products are going to be sold off the shelves tomorrow. And that is what the difference is between when I was there, that, hey, it might work, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So just the fact that we're being so much more aware of the data-driven analytics behind PR programs, that really creates value for what we're doing.
So you mentioned data and analytics, and that's really interesting because we've seen a lot of industries, evolve towards data analytics. Show me the actual numbers behind this. What's my return on investment? What are my key performance indicators? I mean, how can we actually understand if we're doing good or bad? So on the subject of, data analytics, are there any maybe, courses or books or publications that you recommend people currently in their 20s should stay, educated on in order to understand, as this industry evolves, how can I learn more about being an analytical thinker and a data-driven decision maker as well?
Well, I would think that you knew that I actually was co-author of a book with Matt Regas on that topic. So if you're in PR, if you aren't reading this book, then that's a starter. But you don't have to buy this book or take the class. But what you can do, I think one of our big secrets is find an industry that you're interested in, a company you're interested in. I mentioned Starbucks earlier. I follow Starbucks religiously, and I follow a bunch of companies like that. Read their earnings report, circle the words you don't understand, and then look them up. And all of a sudden, you become smart about business. When I first started that job at Lilly, they called me in on the second week and say, you're going to write the earnings report. And I'm sitting there, like a deer in headlights. I leave and I go ask one of my colleagues, what are earnings? I had no idea what I was writing because I didn't know. I wasn't trained that and had that kind of training. So it's one of the reasons I wanted to write this book with Matt is to share with people what I didn't know when I was in college. So one easy way to do it is just engage, follow companies that you're interested in and listen to the analyst report, the analyst call that the CEO generally has at the end of every quarter. And you'll hear how business is described so that you're going to be more comfortable when it comes time to maybe be in a job where they're going to say, hey, kid, go write the earnings report.
And what do you say to the students who, just like you, they come out of a meeting where the CFO says a word they might not even understand, and they come out to their desk and they're like, I have no idea what's happening. What should I do?
Yeah. Well, that's where your network and people in their 20s build your networks. So I fortunately started building a network when I got to Lilly. Now I encourage people to just double up their efforts. Have coffee with people not in your immediate area of the company. But I happened to befriend Bob Draper, who was the investor relations person. And when I went to him, saying, I have no clue what I'm doing, he took me under his wing. He gave me, he defined things. We wrote that press release, and it went through like probably 20 or 30 revisions. But when it was done, the CEO thought it was a good enough product that he said, let's make him responsible for the annual report. So I then got that responsibility, and I had it at every job I had after that. So it's something that stayed with you and actually helped launch my career in some of the more senior positions I had, because I had that background in financial communications, even though I didn't.
Well, Ron, this was truly a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your journey, your advice with not just Michael and I, but of course our viewers and listeners. I understand, you have this long respected career in communications and PR, but, I will say that this interview doesn't just have to be for PR and communications students. Just hearing about your journey, in the corporate America world and, how you really understand the importance of networking, becoming more analytic and data driven in your decisions. I mean, again, this can apply to so many different industries.
It totally is. I'm glad you raised that point, Landon, because you and Michael are good examples of it. It will work anywhere. Yeah. It just happened, and I've taken some detours along the way and done some ventures that are totally entrepreneurial, separate from PR, but. Mm-hmm. All of these principles apply. Just throw yourself into understanding the business as you two are doing, and you're going to have amazing careers.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Michael, do you have any additional?
I was gonna thank you so much, Ron, for being on. It was great to learn about your career and all the different amazing things that are happening with PR. As you said, me and Landon, we might not be. Well, actually, Landon, you are a PR major,
Yeah.
but I may not be a PR major. But interviews like this, there's so much you can grab from it. There's so much information that can apply to anyone. I may be in finance, but you know, we do interviews with people all across different industries, and I can pull out things about different communication tactics or what you should do when you don't know something. That's not just for people in PR. There's so many people in every career that don't know what they're doing, but can learn. So
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, keep on doing what you guys are doing. It's really good for everyone, whether you're 20 or if you're 60.
Yes.
Keep it up.
Of course.